routine. This time, I did it. I went to sleep. My bedroom was dark because I felt like something was watching me. Something was just staring at me. Hello, Bookish readers. My name is Medallio, and welcome to my channel where I review smutty and lovely indie books with giggles and honest commentary. So, support indie authors with me, like and subscribe for more recs and reviews like these. This time, I reviewed a YA romance, that's right, LGBTQ representing you, called Where Demons Reside by Kara Macris. And I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name incorrectly. I do apologize. But this is my first time reading a book by Macris. It was actually recommended by the author to me, I think on Instagram. So the word is spreading, everybody. Indie authors are coming out of the woodwork and they are asking me to review their books. And I actually really enjoyed this book. Question to the readers. This is a very heavy question, and it is, have any of my subscribers and future subscribers, have you ever had a supernatural or spiritual experience? And if you did, would you be comfortable sharing that experience? And I'm going to share mine. So please feel comfortable to share yours. I will share mine, and this is my experience. Okay, when I was in high school, let's back it up. I am a pastor's daughter. I grew up in the Christian church, Baptist. My dad, I grew up in the closet, Free Will Baptist, more like we're not really traditional Baptist. And we participated in the Daniel fast, and I decided to do it. I decided I wanted to get further into my religion and my spiritual connection with God, and this is a high school age, so that's what I did. So in the Daniel fast, you can only eat certain things, and you can only do things that are in the spiritual realm, that are like Christianly and godly. You can't watch like secular TV and listen to secular music. So I do the air quotes because not everybody believes in this type of thing. So that's why I do in air quotes. I'm trying to keep it light, okay? But in my world, we do believe in this. So with the Daniel fast, I'm reading my Bible. I'm reading the scriptures that we're supposed to be reading. I also did my own little Bible study on my own to research and to understand what I was reading better. So I did that. It was my nightly routine. This time, I did it. I went to sleep. My bedroom was dark, just like everybody else's. And, excuse me. So, but I woke up because I felt like something was watching me. Something was just staring at me while I was sleeping. So I jolted awake, thinking that something was in my room, looked around, and then I looked in front of me at the foot of my bed, and there was a dark figure, a tall, thin, dark figure standing in my bed. And I was just staring at it because I was like, maybe it's one of my siblings. Maybe they're sleepwalking. Maybe it was my mom. It was somebody like a small, but like actually not her size at all. She's very small, so it wouldn't have been her. But I was disoriented, and I didn't understand why there was something standing there. Especially, it was standing long enough for me to realize that the moonlight was coming in from the window, and it was hitting this being, and it wasn't penetrating the darkness that this person had around them. It was just light silhouetting them, but it wasn't light actually touching them. So I'm staring at it, wondering, what is this? Maybe I'm still dreaming. All of a sudden, it walks a little bit to like the corner of the foot of my bed, hunches down, then it gets down on all fours, and then it morphed into something in the dark, because I can see it, which is also strange because my room was pretty dark, but the moonlight was coming in, so the moonlight kind of helped me see things a little bit better. But it was just like, it was a dark being, but it was like an offset of the dark, if that makes any sense. But it morphed into this thing, into this like animal, like maybe a dog, maybe a hound, you know, like one of those hounds that you see, you know, that people talk about in Supernatural. But yeah, so it morphed, and then I'm like, I'm not gonna like jump, like I'm like sitting up now. I'm like heavily alert. I'm like, what the hell is happening? What's going on here? And then it sprinted at me. It like lunged at me. I have never run so fast ever in my life. I ran straight to my parents' room, and I looked behind me because like my dad was still awake, and I was gonna like barge in and be like, you need to bless my room, you need to do something. You gotta do something, because I was like, it's not gonna hurt him because you know he's heavily connected to God. But I was just like, I ran to the room, I was about to barge in, and I looked behind me and it was not there. And I was like, maybe it was my imagination. I have no idea what it was. I believe, because of what I believe spiritually, that maybe it was a demonic force because of how deep in my religion that I was becoming in this fast. But you better believe that the next day I told my dad about it, and he immediately got some holy oil and blessed the whole house. He was like, not up in here. So, but I never saw it again. But we did move from that house. But even still, I never saw it again. Okay, so that was my story. I hope that you enjoyed it. It's terrifying, right? But it's my story. If you have one, please drop it. I'd love to know what happened to you in your spiritual journey. Spice level. Okay, so this is a YA romance. I was not expecting any open door anything, and I did not get any open door anything. So like this, one pepper and a kiss. I thought that the main character, Thomas, and his love interest, Elijah, they had really great tension. And that's what kept me on my toes with this story. And there were some spicy scenes. There's a lot of kissing, which I like too. But there was like one spicy scene. But it was a closed door spicy scene. But it really built me up, where the author wrote it like it was happening. They had a buildup of pleasure. They were about to get it in, and then the door closed. But then there was this part in that scene where it sounded like Thomas was on top. And I was like, oh, wait. Thomas. Because Thomas was not confident at all throughout the book. He was very much a 17-year-old guy, 17-year-old kid, awkward, still trying to figure out who he was. But near the end, like middle to end of the book, we got that confidence. So I was like, and that's when the spicy scene happened. So it made sense. It was written very well. Star rating. I gave this 4 stars. I thought the plot was just bang out interesting because there were so many twists and turns within the plot, and it all came together. I also think those twists and turns made me gasp, and I was also like, what? Like sometimes. But what really drew me in the most was this love story underneath the plot with Elijah and Thomas, and I loved their banter. I thought it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. Hello there. Don't mind me. I just wanted to reach out to you to let you know that there is a really great and critically acclaimed paranormal fated mates romance that is out there on Kindle Unlimited, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere else books are sold. It is called the Hybrid series, and it's by Medallio Green. Isn't that interesting? Huh? The first book is Youngblood, second book is Shadow Creatures, and the third book is on its way. So pick up your copy of Youngblood or Shadow Creatures. You don't have to read them in sequence. We love that. If you like a good fated mates paranormal romance, I put the link in my caption. It's also in my bio. Summary. Where Demons Reside starts off with Thomas. He's the main male character, and he has to perform an exorcism. So he basically jumped right into this from the beginning. He's marched into the Catholic Church with his grandfather, and he is told that he's going to be performing an exorcism in front of the other principalities in the church. Now, principalities are described in the book as humans with angel blood, and I immediately thought of like Goliath.
It's David meets Goliath.
Because giants in the Bible are, their bloodline is, trying to say it lightly, like to make it make sense, because it doesn't really make sense, but okay, so giants are created by angels consummating with human women, and thus a giant is created. So I immediately thought, okay, so they're like giant blood. I don't think that's what the author was going for, but in this story, Thomas has a panic attack, and he goes into the bathroom to basically like try to get himself together, and that's where he meets Elijah, and Elijah gives him a little bit of a chant to help soothe him, and this is where Thomas feels a genuine connection between he and Elijah. Like, he really feels something for this guy, even though they just met. So when Thomas comes out and he's about to perform the exorcism to this girl who is obviously possessed, another little girl comes up because she's like, stop, there's another way. What if I told you there was another way? What if you could do this without hurting her? And Thomas is like, what do you mean? Because he has no idea what he's doing. He's just doing what he's told. And this little girl is telling him, if you perform this exorcism, then you're going to unalive her. And she's basically saying, we might be able to find a way or figure out a way to save her soul. So Thomas doesn't really know what to do at this point, and he goes through with the exorcism because his grandfather urges him to do so, because it's what you're supposed to do. And when he does it, the girl definitely is unalived, and now Thomas is reeling in guilt, and he wants nothing more to get away from his grandfather and this whole entire situation. And principalities too. Thomas is a principality, and that also means, besides having angel blood, that you have magic. You're a magical being.
I have magic, you don't.
Perform these exorcisms with magic, and the chants that they use are biblical scriptures. So I thought it was interesting as well, because I think that's what an angel would do anyway. An angel would use scripture in modern conversation. So Thomas goes back home. He lives a few towns away in Anoka, and his grandfather lives in Meadowbank. So he and his mom don't really hear from the grandfather for a little while. The mother's getting kind of concerned because she thought that he would have been like, tearing up the phone trying to get Thomas to come back, because that's what he did before. But she was like, he's a bit of an introvert sometimes, but she lets it go until she doesn't. And she finds out from a neighbor that he was deceased, that he was unalived. So in that will that her father left behind, he leaves Thomas and the mother his home in Meadowbank, and she decides to pack up everything and move there. And that's when Thomas realizes that Elijah and his family, which is Lily and Bill, the father, they live across the street from the grandfather, which is interesting, But with their influence, Thomas is basically able to, what's the word I'm looking for? He is able to, I'll just word it differently. Thomas and Elijah, they're able to grow their connection between each other because they have all this time, and they have less space between each other. And Thomas finds out a load of secrets with just being in Meadowbank. He finds out who he really is. He finds out who Elijah really is and what Elijah really means to him. And he also finds out that, there's so much underneath this whole battle of good and evil. Character analysis. So from here on out, there are going to be some spoilers. Just letting you know. But Thomas, he's described to me as someone with like low self-esteem, and he's got like very low on the confidence scale, even though he has all this power and self-righteousness from being Archangel Michael's reincarnated self. But Thomas alone, without all of that, he has a very big heart, and he wants to help, but he also wants to understand. Elijah's quiet. He's also the quintessential teenage boy. He likes to pull pranks on people to see what their reactions are. He just likes to like get under your skin. He'll make things awkward, and then he'll shrink back into this like serious deadpan face, which I think is so teenage boy-esque. But he's also tortured because of the abuse that he endured as a foster kid. And then even though he's in a safer place with Bill, he's still being abused there too in certain ways. And we find out that there's a really big way that he is abused later on in the story. Conflict. I think there was a ton of conflict. There was a ton going on in this story, which is what I said in the beginning as to what kept me interested. But here are my takeaways. The number one thing are the demon-possessed people that are either giving into their madness or they're trying not to give into it. There's also the concern of like all the principalities have been unalived except for Thomas. He's the last one standing. There's also Thomas and Elijah's growing relationship and how that's represented and, how they can be together through all of this. And then the last is, are they going to be able to save these lost souls? Conclusion. Where Demons Reside had a lot of holes in it to me that I didn't understand. There were just a lot of parts of the book that I think needed to be summed up better, like the exorcism, for instance, when Thomas is supposed to exorcise that girl, and Lily walks up and she's like, you can save her. There's a way to save her soul. Why didn't Lily and her family, because Elijah and Bill were both there, why didn't they just save the girl? Like, why didn't they just, like, grab her and, like, teleport out of there? I know that they're supposed to keep a low profile, which is what Elijah sums up near the end of the book. However, it's also noted that the principalities can sense demons. So wouldn't they have already known that they were there? Also, near the end, when, they're obviously going to exorcise her and they can't really do anything about it, Lily starts crying black demon blood. And it's obvious now that they're demons, right? Thomas even mentions it. He's like, nobody's going to say anything about this. The other principalities just didn't seem to care. And I didn't really understand that, because you're supposed to be exorcising demons. Wouldn't you try to do that to them? I didn't get it. So another instance, too, is Thomas imprisoned Sharon on the field. Why didn't he just keep her imprisoned? Because she was clearly giving into her madness. Didn't understand that part. And there's another instance, too, where Zadkiel, which is Elijah, he's Beelzebub reincarnate. Why was Zadkiel so hell-bent on destroying Thomas? Hurting him, destroying him, when he's supposed to be Michael's love, and Thomas is Michael reincarnate. And he knew that this was Thomas, that this was Michael reincarnate, but he kept trying to hurt him. I was just not understanding that at all. And then there were some instances, too, where the dialogue just was not understandable. I didn't understand where it was going. I didn't understand what information we were getting from it, because we weren't given anything new through the dialogue. Just kind of like a summation of what we already read, which I didn't think was necessary. And then there were a lot of instances, too, where there were some word choices that weren't right. Like, one of the sentences was supposed to have Thomas's name in it, but instead of Thomas, it was thought. I know that happens. I know it does. But I do note that if it's more than 3, then I think that, it should be proofread better. That's all I'm saying. But there were some great things that I liked about the story. I loved the love story between Zadkiel and Michael. I thought it was really well written. I also, at first, was like, why is Elijah's story in first person? Why did it change? We were on third person the whole time. But I actually ended up being grateful that the author changed it and made it into first person. So those are some really great things. Another thing that I didn't really appreciate was that the ending was so abrupt. It just ended. I mean, we got everything wrapped up, but it just ended. I think that too, so going into this read, I didn't know that there were so many triggers to this. There's a lot of gore, if you haven't already noticed. There's a lot of gore, there's a lot of blood, there's unaliving. I didn't know any of this. There's also I'm looking at my notes, sorry. There's suicidal thoughts, and there's also child abuse. Recommendation. So I recommend that you read Where Demons Reside by Kara Macris. Just be open-minded in regards to demonology and the spiritual world. And just remember that this is a YAMM romance. But that's all I have for you regarding this review. Please support indie authors with me. Subscribe for more book recs and reviews just like these. That's all I have for you, but thank you so much. Goodbye.